Yeah, well, I ain't walking inside.
We'll call the November 20th, 2017 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for Polk City, Iowa to order. Roll call.
Hankins. Vogel.
Here.
Bowersox.
Here.
Olfest.
Here.
Item 3, approval of the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Item 4, anyone in the audience here to discuss an item that's not on the agenda? No, or?
Well, I have something to discuss, but I didn't realize this was actually the planning and zoning meeting. I thought it was gonna be a city council meeting, so I was just trying to catch somebody here.
So you're disappointed, right?
Well, it worked out great because a little time ahead would have been okay.
Yes. Okay, so,
I'll buy that.
okay. Hearing none, we'll go to item 5, approval of the P and Z
Okay, one
Commission.
session. All right.
Session.
All right.
Minutes for October 16th, 2017.
Make a motion to approve the October 16, 2017 work session minutes as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Item 6, approval of the P and Z Commission meeting minutes for October 16th, 2017.
I'll make a motion to approve the P&Z Commission meeting minutes for October 16, 2007 as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Item 7A, Whitetail Ridge. Consider motion to recommend council approve final plat for Whitetail Ridge plat 1. Do you have anything to do? Jeff, do you wanna?
Yeah, just walking through. My name is Kelsey Hill, Battery, here on behalf of Dare Development. So this is the final plat for plots 1 and 2 here tonight. This is the preliminary plots for these 2 lots previously approved this early fall, and then had the public comments ongoing, the sanitary water received for the city council, and then the storm sewer and roadway design cascading for this as well. So this is the final step in getting these Whitetail Ridge plats ready.
Anything to add at level, Gary?
Kathleen is within seconds of being.
Oh, okay,
here.
she's coming.
However, from staff's point of view, there you can see the review comments. The developer wants to move this through the P&Z, and then when he's got most of the improvements in, if not all, and most of the improvements that would be dedicated to the city would be going in front of the city council. So this is a little early, but with the amount of work that has been accomplished so far, since the council has approved the construction drawings, plans, they could be ready as early as December. So this is in front of you. There are no substantial changes. In fact, I don't think there's any changes from the preliminary plat.
So just a quick question. I got home from vacation late last night, so I just looked at this today for the first time. I didn't, in my read of it, I didn't see anything talking about in the agreement how the park dedication is going to end up being handled, and how is that? I mean, I think we've talked about how it's going to be handled. How is it documented?
It will be documented through a development agreement.
Okay. And just a kind of a broad brush statement. I know a lot of times we judge these things sometimes on length of the document. And the issues section of this is very short. The document is actually talking about legal documents that are done later or before the council. So that they aren't really outstanding issues per se.
It's between this one and plat commission will recall that there's going to be a series of future lot ties on Once Hub Drive. And the new, I think it's Whitetail Ridge Drive, is put in, then parts of Hub Drive will go to a dead end, and some of that will be vacated, and thus you will end up with with some more lots. Those are configured right now as outlocks with X, Y, and then when you get to Plat 2, you'll see some more outlocks there as well.
Sorry. I'm not sure what,
For
We're-
that one, we just,
okay.
I'm just explaining that
Yeah, I mean, the right-of-way does have a significant number of, it looks like a little bit of a patchwork of a right-of-way, but it's to make things simpler in the future, so when they do the lot ties or vacation, either one, so. And then with respect to, I don't know if you hopefully have, if you've covered this, but there will be a development agreement that will cover the future construction of both Whitetail, or West Whitetail Parkway, as well as Buckstown. Because those will be constructed in the future when adjacent, we'll set it up so that they can be constructed independently, just depending on the lot layout that comes in for that next plat. That you'll see, and that will require not only the paving and the utilities, but also recreational trail on the south side of the parkway and the parkway trees. Then the legal documents, including the easements and that kind of thing, we'll get those before this goes forward to council. I mean, and the public improvements are not yet complete, so we'll be timing when it goes to council based on when those improvements get completed. And also, we're going to be getting a copy of the recorded offsite easements there's a sanitary sewer easement that's actually on property that NAP did own, that will be part of a future, that my understanding is this district will be acquiring that, so we'll get those offsite easements, and then some on Sally Jensen's property as well, just to make sure that everything's in order before those public improvements are accepted.
Is that the farmstead?
Yeah,
Okay.
yep. Also, we're needing the street light design, we haven't got that in yet, but that will get before it goes on to council as well. All the comments that staff had on the reviewing of the plat drawing itself have been addressed. With the exception of the items that were needed before it goes to council. I guess one thing, I don't know if Gary mentioned this, but the residence on lot 1 does fall outside the 250-foot hydrant coverage, but the home is sprinkled, so that still meets code. Okay. So for being late.
Questions on anything? Comments from anybody in the audience?
So Doug, do you have any questions or anything that
No.
we've kind of been through this a few times, but want to make sure you understand.
Right, no, it looked well done, it made sense. Read the comments and future lot ties and so forth, it all seemed very clear. Looks good.
So I'll make a motion that we recommend to council approval of the final plat for Whitetail Ridge Plat 1, subject to engineers, or completion of, subject to engineers write-up and completion of issues, review comments, legal documents, public improvement acceptance and recommendations as highlighted in the write-up dated November 16, 2007.
I second.
Go ahead.
I will second that.
All right. Roll call?
Olfest,
Yes.
Hankins,
Yes.
Vogel,
Yes.
Bowersox,
Yes.
All right. Item 7B, consider motion to recommend council approve final plat for Whitetail Ridge Plat 2. Kathleen, you wanna lead in anything you have?
Sure, I mean, obviously this is similar, just kind of the mirrored thing. Again, it's got the patchwork of right-of-way parcels to ease the transition for when it's vacated, those parcels are vacated and Whitetail Parkway is constructed. There's also, in this case, some outlots on the south side that are in the floodplain. And that just in order to separate those from the buildable parcels so that flood insurance is not an issue. We ask that those be separated out. Those will also have a record of lot tie to permanently tie each one of those small outlots to the adjoining lot. There's not a development agreement required for this particular one. One thing to note is that the buildable area on lot 6 does not fall within the 250-foot hydrant coverage. So either the home has to be constructed entirely within that, which once the right-of-way is vacated would be simpler, but timing-wise, we don't know which, if they're gonna build on that now or later. So it would either need to fall within that 250 feet, or else that residence would need to be sprinkled too. So we had to ask them to note that on the plat as a requirement there per code. And then lot 6 would not have a sidewalk that would go in with the plat. I mean, because eventually what will wind up happening is there'll be the 10-foot wide trail on the south side of Whitetail Parkway. So we're not gonna have a sidewalk and then the trail right next to it. So as part of the building permit, that one would not be required to put in a sidewalk. I guess the only other thing that's unique to this one, well, obviously we still do need to accept the public improvements, which in this case is just a sanitary sewer and water main. There's no paving associated with this other than patching that was done after the utility construction. Those will need to be ready to be accepted. Again, we'll need the street lights. And in this case, I'm not sure timing wise if this plat if Jared will close on this before the final plat goes to council. Pardon?
It's already.
Okay, then never mind. So that answers that. So there is an existing cart path easement that I think was contingent on part of your closing, perhaps. So we'll need to get the book and page added on that. So otherwise, again, they've addressed all of our comments that need to be addressed at this point in time. Still need legal documents, street light design, and acceptance of public. So it's entirely possible this plat could be approved first, since there's not paving associated with it. Maybe in a position that we could accept depending on the timing wise, if developers interested, we could possibly proceed with accepting this water main and sanitary sewer, and then this final plat, even if the paving, depending on the timing of the paving completion. So whatever works best for the developer on that.
There's no more questions. I'll go ahead.
Okay.
Okay. I go ahead and propose that we accept the final plat review for Whitetail Ridge Plat 2 pursuant to completion of the review comments, the final plat, legal documents, public improvement, acceptance, and the recommendations.
I'll second that.
Roll call?
Hankins,
Yes.
Vogel,
Yes.
Bowersox,
Yes.
Olfest,
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Item 8, discuss updates to tree ordinance.
Before Kathleen gets started, one of the questions that was asked is for the tree board to come up with the trees. Ken Morris was in the office last week, and well, here's a list. Well, I possibly wouldn't endorse all of these trees. This is a starting point. So we will continue to work that and possibly even work with Iowa State University or Iowa State Urban Forestry to come up with a set of trees. But at least we will continue to start gathering that list.
And I think the discussion last time was to recommend the trees, not say this is we'll have a recommended list.
Must
but
choose from, but
They're good, yeah. We don't have to, there may be other trees that get overlooked for species or whatever. We don't want to make it ironclad forever. That's
I think it's to give somebody a starting point that doesn't really
right.
have all that tree knowledge.
Exactly.
But, and the one thing you can do too is, it could be a list that's recommended and is by resolution, so you can update it anytime you want to. It's a lot simpler than
Right.
actually having it be part of your ordinance, which
That would
is
be
a lot more onerous to amend.
Okay.
Getting you down to final form on the ordinance. The intent tonight was to see which areas needed additional review, which areas you don't like, areas you do like, and we will get this into a final form, and then hopefully at the December meeting, we can get a recommendation to send this on.
In the copy that you had in your packets, the items that were highlighted are the items that we added after, or were changed after the last month's meeting.
The green item, kind of the updated item.
They're kind of not incorporated in the ordinance, so but that's just, so we don't forget about those. Which one of those is the recommended species list that Gary was talking about? And then the other relates to the site plan code section, which would be a different chapter. But even that, when I was looking at that, we had talked about with the site plans, talking about the parking lot trees, that you have a requirement under site plans for parking. There would be so many parking lot trees based on the surface area of the parking lot. But, or maybe even or having so many vehicles in a row before you had a parking lot island that's required where you have a tree in an island. And all those are fine. I kind of wanted to look and see what that might mean to some specific site plans. So we might pull out a few site plans just to kind of test run it to see the impacts, so that we're not requiring something that's either too onerous or not restrictive enough. So anyway, I just kind of thought, just try a couple of maybe a small site and a larger site, just to see what it would look like if the ordinance was in place. So we could do that next month if you want, or January. I don't know if you want to get through this particular ordinance first, or how you want to handle that.
I was thinking the changes kind of addressed our concerns. Did we hear anything from the tree board on these, or just any thumbs up or anything that they looked at?
Since it was a combination of both, I think we just brought them into here.
Okay.
We did not send it on to tree. We certainly can. Just wanted to make sure I did the speak there.
Yeah, I mean, some of the main, I noticed that the topping, under definitions, it was actually defined somewhere else in the ordinance, so that's more just moved it to the front, put the rest of the definitions. That was something that was kind of left over from the original ordinance, but again, just to put all the definitions together. Other changes were the discussion on non-conforming trees in the public right-of-way, where we talked about if it's 50% or more, that it would be The city's responsibility, if it's less than 50%, it would be the private property owner's responsibility to remove the tree or maintain that tree. And then requiring parkway and buffer trees, stating just real clearly in ordinance form that those trees are there. The easements will eventually say that as well, but that just making it really clear that if it's in a parkway, which would be an easement like we just had on Whitetail Ridge, where we've got a parkway easement that's next to a parkway, that when it is in that easement, that is the property owner's responsibility to take care of those trees. So they are private trees, even though they are within an easement. And that same would apply to any buffers. Anytime any developer has to put in a buffer, then it's their responsibility, which is the way it is now, but it just clarifies that. Then the 15111 is where we're saying that with a building permit for a single family, there's one overstory tree in the front, required in the front yard, and if it's a two-family home or a duplex, there would be two trees. I put in there as either 2 overstory trees or 1 overstory and 1 understory, just depending on the size of the lot. 2 overstories might be too much. So making it clear that it's at least one of them would be an overstory, but one could be an understory tree as well. And then, as you know, anything that's multifamily or commercial, those have to go through a site plan process. So this is just for the single family and 2-family homes because they don't go through the formal site plan review process.
So is there, as you read this, it says trees shall be planted prior to issuance of permanent certificate of occupancy, but if they have an existing tree in their front yard, does that count, or are they required to?
Well, maybe we need to
Plant
specify, this is for a new home, and maybe we need to specify that, because it's not when you come in for a building permit for a deck,
Right,
as an example.
right.
So,
So I'm just thinking if somebody did carve out and left trees there, what if they have 3 in their front yard?
oh, sure, yeah,
Do we need a statement that covers that, or?
we could.
Or is
Yeah,
it-
and I think we need to say something about it, that it's new construction and maybe waived by, I don't know if you want to waive it by the city administrator or who, and so that's a staff thing.
If they have the established tree.
But I mean,
Yeah. So I'm thinking, yeah, that could be done by staff.
yeah,
And most of the times they're probably not going to, but in a few spots in town might be.
sure, yeah,
So-
yeah, that makes sense. That's a good point. And then the tree planting guidelines, and I call them guidelines to make sure, that they're not an absolute requirement, but it's a guideline and a suggestion, which this was as suggested by the tree board, which says they should be balled in burlap rather than in containers, and that their property owners responsible for regular watering, and recommends gator bags, perforated buckets, or similar means of slow release watering. And that the trees are mulched with wood chips, bark, or a similar material. Didn't want to even begin to try to list all the many kinds of materials you might use. And that they would be staked for a period of 1 year following planting.
A minor point, but, obviously, it's a pre-spade too, moved in. We're just trying to say.
Okay, yeah, sure, yep.
Don't want.
Yep.
Tree container.
Not everybody does that either, but
No.
it does happen.
We did it at the church only because we had trees donated.
Yeah, yep.
Can I ask one other question not related to that, but on the island issue, are we talking about necessarily a curbed island, trees in it, or could there be other? I've seen trees in parking lots that are in big concrete, I'll call them pipes, big 8-foot diameter, so it's easier to clean around them for snow removal and that. We need to define that, or is that an issue at this point, or?
We hadn't really talked about that at all.
The issue is to try to get some green in the parking lot, not having an ocean of asphalt out there, right?
Right. Yeah, and I guess I'm not familiar enough with the pipes to know how they work and if there's any long-term impact to the root system or
Obviously,
anything
you
that
can't
way.
get a 100-year tree to grow into something like that, but some pretty big trees growing in an 8-foot diameter pipe, and it's a lot easier to clean around than having that,
Uh-huh.
That's
Yeah,
just a question.
yeah, we can look at that. I mean, if you have some examples of where that would be.
Now, there were a lot of them up in Sioux City. I'll have to look around here and see if I can find a few.
Get some
They
pictures.
did them all over up there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can check with our landscape architects too, so. And it may be that you could still require a mulch bed that doesn't necessarily have a curb. I mean, they have to be careful when they're plowing so they don't get too close to the tree, but if it's of enough size, you know,
Sure.
yeah, in the spring they might have to clean it up a little bit. I don't know, you'd have to have a curb.
Any other comments?
Go ahead.
Anything anybody wants to add to our discussion? No? Okay.
I got experience with those trees and the concrete, that we had a project in Waukee that was a church, and they had started out with all the trees in there, which looked great for about a year and a half, and then they all just started to go downhill, and it's because all that compacted clay from moving dirt originally, they didn't do anything underneath that tree. They threw a ball of burlap in there, mulch it, looks great for a year or two, and then they all died. And the only thing that solved it later was to come back and they had to drill some serious holes in there to try to give it something, but I don't know if there's anything you can require in preparation for that. Otherwise, you get a tree that looks good for a couple of years and then shrivels up, done.
I think that's similar to streetscapes, you know, with some of the tree wells and things like that. Right. Comment? Okay. Anything else you want us to add?
No, on this tree ordinance. No.
Okay.
I'm very pleased with what's happening.
So next step is,
Do you want to send it to the tree board? I mean,
well, if indeed it's not gonna delay the process,
Well, we can,
yeah, would like them to
we'll get these
say that
updates,
looks good.
and we'll get those out. Both you guys and the tree board, and ask for comments from the tree board, and make sure that you have those comments.
pretty good. They were involved. Just see where we're at. So, item 9, council liaison report.
I'd just like to say that all the recommendations that you guys made at the meeting of the 17th, 16th, all passed unanimously with the council. The crossroads at the lakes, the rezoning and the PUD change the second and third readings were waived and it was adopted on the first. Just, nobody had complained. It wasn't really that urgent.
You're talking to easement.
Yeah, the easement, the zoning change and the PUD change at Crossroads.
Okay, yes.
And so we waived on the second, third. At Deer Haven, it was not accepted yet because there was a lot of things left to do, but was voted correct.
No, we're laughing
It's
because.
getting there.
But the council voted to allow basement digging only because I think the reasoning behind that was because there's so many people been waiting down there so long to get their homes started, so,
Time of year. I mean,
yeah. And that's about it.
Thanks, appreciate that. Staff report. Anything to add?
Have a good Thanksgiving.
You too.
Okay. Commission report.
I just want to bring up a question of perhaps something we should consider doing. Back when the Northeast Beltway was proposed, I'm not really sure what the status of that is anymore. But it was my understanding that the county was actually going to go out and mark properties where the lots or where the route was going to be, and then would essentially prevent building permits from being issued for new structures on that route. Whether it was done with the site plan or harder to spot is when it's not done with the site plan, when it's just being a building added on to an existing property or being put on a property that doesn't already have a building. And what I'm wondering is should we be more proactive at looking at the future route of whitetail as it's going to be going east, and consider doing something like that with properties where this could be crossing. There's going to be some spots, I think, that are going to be high priority, particularly as you are looking at where is the best spot to cross the ravine.
Yeah, it's gonna be a bit of a challenge to get through there, and if you limit it further.
And and so I think it would be good for us to make a decision where that route should be and try to be proactive about preventing more impediments from occurring. So we're at step one, and that's getting whitetail kicked off. I just want to make sure that we keep it moving along as more developments come in. And I'm just throwing that out there. And that was the Northeast Beltway. I just remember that being talked about back then and was wondering if that's an approach.
We'll look into that. I
Okay.
don't know if we can take that approach, but I'm sure there's other approaches that are available to us. And yes, the Northeast Beltway got shelved about 10 years ago, 10 years ago. So definitely understand. We'll look at that.
I guess as we talk about lights, are there lights that are gonna go in down on, south of the square down there?
Deer Haven,
Oh, yes, yes.
there is a contract with Mid-America.
There's a lot of people using it and they're walking the street and it's dark.
Yeah, they have their right-of-way permit and everything. I just think it's just,
Okay.
yeah.
So it's in the works.
We'd approve the streetlight layout. For
Okay.
the most part, it's streetlights at the intersection, a couple interim
Sure.
locations, but,
Okay.
I don't know how quick they'll get to it.
But if they're smart, they'd get there before the frost.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure the builders would like to have this to electricity.
Right.
For the
Well, that's
tools
gonna be
and-
a problem for them if they get to that.
Yeah, or they're kind of using a generator.
All right.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
All right?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nobody.